Hey there YouTubers and subscribers, RoseRed17 here, and here is the review for Eden Zero Volume 17, Chapters 141 to 150. Another intriguing volume to discuss, and like the last volume, this is considered short, but the chapters are worth talking about, so let's get down to it. In Chapter 141, A World of Ashes, the Eden Zero ship managed to get through the force field and enter in the destroyed all-link system, but then the entire ship was stopped by Shira's gravity power, so Shiki asked Hermit to send him down to the surface to deal with Shira himself, and this is the first time we see Shira and Shiki come face to face. They start to have their little brawl as Hermit detects high-level ether gear powers from both Shira and Shiki. Now on to the next chapter, which is called Shiki vs. Shira, and I know all of you are hyped up for this moment, and I will have to say myself, that fight looked pretty epic. Now even though the chapter is mainly about the fight between the two gravity wielders, but I didn't forget about the others, like Goodwin's crew is fighting this man named Eraser, the Shining Stars, Jin Clean, and Laguna are doing their parts in the fight as well. And then there's Weiss, Rebecca, Homura, Pino, and Happy underground in search for the all-link system. And remember in the last video when I said that I'll forget about the all-link system because there's a lot going on? Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen, because as Rebecca's team is off to destroy the system, it cuts back to Shiki and his fight with Shira. As the two are punching blows to each other, Shira reflects Shiki's counterattacks. And you will not believe the words that came out of this guy's mouth. And what he told Shiki shocked me. And I had to wait until the release of the next chapter to hear the response. Now those of you who read up to this point in the manga, you should know what I'm saying. But those of you who haven't, get ready for this. This guy Shira, right here, told Shiki, our hero, that he wants to be his friend. Never would I have ever expected that. And what was Shiki's response? Well, in chapter 143, You Didn't Do Anything to Deserve This, Shiki mentioned that he doesn't want to be friends with anyone who thinks that robots are nothing more than tools. However, Shiki is considering to be his friend if Shira puts a stop to his plan destroying all robots. Even if Shira might consider his offer, which I doubt, his words about the robots made Shiki reconsider their little deal and slap Shira's hand away. And I don't need to repeat the words that Shiki said. And because of Shiki's rejection, Shira called upon thousands of bots to attack him, leaving him in the hands of his army, while Shira crashed into the Eden Zero ship and attacking the crew on board. And with Rebecca's group, they stumble upon a room of mirrors that has the capability to reflect all person's dark side, turning into the other half. Now on to chapter 144, Through the Looking Glass. It starts with Goodwin fighting against Shira's group, but at the same time, so is Eraser, and since they are fighting the same enemies, they decide to work together. While on the Eden Zero, Shira is on the ship attacking the crew while Shiki is dealing with the robots from the surface. Then he gets a call from Hermit trying to tell him that they're in trouble, but then he gets cut off. Shiki got the message and willing to return to the Eden Zero ship, but the robots pin him down as one of them self-destructed, causing an explosion. Yeah, another fake out death scene, everybody, and I will get how Shiki survived. But for now, Weiss and the others are dealing with Darkside Homura. Rebecca plans on using her ether gear to travel back to the time before Homura looked at the mirror. Weiss started to attack, but then remembered that bullets doesn't work on Homura's sword skills. Then Pino activated her EMP to cancel out her ether gear, and Rebecca advised Weiss to take the shot but then points his gun at her instead, as he was also affected by the mirror. That is when Rebecca activated her ether gear and managed to tell Weiss not to look at the mirror, but failed to warn Homura, as they made their escape, leaving the real Homura behind the other side of the mirror, along with one of the Ocean Six. And you know what? I have been thinking about how Rebecca's power truly works in its full state, and we learned that the Cat Leaper activates on its own without Rebecca knowing. But since now she started to have control over it, I started to see some key difference of how or when she uses it. Back in chapter 121, when she discovered the risk of the Cat Leaper, but also learned the point of when and where to travel back, and that point on time is like an anchor. Now one time watching the show called Miraculous Ladybug, I remember a snake Kwame called Sass who has the power of second chance. And how that power works is that the user of that Kwame can travel back as many times they can, but they can only travel back to the time and place when it was first used after the transformation and after its first activation. If you compare Sass's second chance to Rebecca's Cat Lemur, it works in the same way. But the difference between the two is that the Cat Lemur is bound to Rebecca's will, where she has the capability to decide when to drop that anchor, while Luca, the holder of the Snake Miraculous doesn't have the capability. Cause like I said before, the snake's power can only travel back to the point of its first activation after transforming. I don't know if it makes any sense, but that is the best I can explain it. But I'm hoping to get my point across about my theory on Rebecca's ether gear powers. But I think I'm done rambling about my little theory here, and let's move on to the next chapter. Now, as the name of the chapter, Homura vs. Milani, who is the master of mirrors, and I would have to say this fighting scene is pretty interesting. At first, it seems like Milani is just tossing broken mirror shards at Homura, but then you see a leg sticking out of one of the shards. You know, the same fighting style as Haku in Naruto, but I digress. But back to Homura and Milani. What I find interesting about this fight is that not only the mirrors give Milani an upper hand on defeating her foes, but if anyone sees a reflection of themselves after destroying the shards, it reflects pain onto them. But our girl Homura, being the badass that she is, managed to avoid the pain after giving a great speech about being one of the shining stars of Eden Zero. And the swords to protect those that she cared for, it releases her overdrive, which is something I didn't expect. I wonder if Rebecca and Weiss got their overdrives as well, and if so, I would wonder what their forms would look like, especially Rebecca and the cat lemur powers. But we'll have to wait and see if it happens or not. So towards the end of the chapter, Jin goes down to the surface to find Shiki, but instead finds broken robots everywhere in a pile of ashes. Jin finds Shiki underneath the pile of broken bots and managed to survive the blast. And you can tell by the expression on Jin's face saying, "How the did you survive that?" Then we notice Shiki crying, and then it cuts to Homura in her overdrive mode. But before I get to the fight between her and Milani, I actually want to talk about how Shiki survived that blast. You see, it turns out that the robots were protecting Shiki from the one robot with the bomb, and they feel it was the least they can do as they see Shiki as a good person and care about the robots. They too don't want to kill humans, but we're programmed to do so as they have no choice but to obey Shira. So this is another heartbreaking moment for Shiki, as he has already experienced a similar scenario. Remember at the beginning, Shiki was betrayed by his robot family, when in truth they were actually saving him from loneliness. These robots, however, protected him from the explosion even though Shiki barely knows them. In my personal opinion, this is a good impact on Shiki's character as he's ready to go back to the Eden Zero ship. Once Jin and Shiki got there, Sister and Hermit were broken and Witch was kidnapped by Shira at the end of the chapter. But before I talk about the next one, I did mention I was going to go back to the fight between Homura and Milani. Now the one thing I want to talk about is Homura's overdrive, or more on the turn of when did she tame it. This power-up is great and she looks good, as she managed to defeat Milani in one strike. But what bothers me about this is that this upgrade seems random, as if it just came out of nowhere. I was thinking that Homura had some off-screen training, or she had this power all the time but had no proper experience with it yet. But because we know she can be reckless with Shiki, anything could be possible. But then I remember the training they all have with the Gravity Master Zenwit, and that she obtained her overdrive through his training process. But like I said in the last video, if Homura can get overdrive, I wonder if Rebecca or Weiss can get them too. I think it's possible since anyone with ether gear can get this power up. It's like if you're a Dragon Slayer that can gain the ultimate form known as Dragon Force. However, I will have to say that I don't have much researches on overdrive and how it can be tamed, or if it's only for holders for a certain type of ether gear. Some ether gear powers are not meant for battle, but are useful for other things, like repair broken systems or traveling back in time, which in my opinion is the most unique and useful power that anyone can ever have. But enough about my blathering and get on to the next chapter, because if I keep talking, we're gonna be here all day, trust me. Now on to the next chapter called Rage, Fear, and Grief, where we see Sister and Hermit repair themselves and with Witch being captured and tortured by Shira. And I will have to say that I really don't like this chapter for various reasons. For one thing, this chapter seems kind of dull to me. There's not much going on besides Shiki having a rage and emotional breakdown that makes him act like a jerk towards his comrades. But of course, he does manage to calm down and think of a plan to save Witch. But he was also reminded that Rebecca and Weiss are in an underground base of Shira's hideout, when they come across one of the Ocean Six named Nessa, who has the power to make girls cry and have the boys scared for their lives. And then there's another member named Lyra, whose character design is awkwardly unique and terrifying terrifying at the same time. And it isn't really explained what her ether gear does. I mean, it could be similar to Kana's magic, as you can see her with a deck of cards. And to add a bonus, this chapter came out the day before the chapter of 100 Year Quest, chapter 84, Icy Fantasy. And it feels ironic that the chapter that I like and the one I dislike came out in the same week. And that's all I have to say about this chapter, so moving on to the next one.
1 week later.
Okay, why do I even bother anymore? I know I didn't like the last chapter, but this one is not as bad. I mean, there are some stuff coming from, like, Justice returning to fight off Shiki's ally and teaming up with the enemy, but there are things like Moscow taking a lead for a few panels, or maybe the androids might have a chance to win against the foes. But it doesn't work out because the enemy's ether gear does work on the androids. When we thought it couldn't just take a longer process, and ending the chapter with a creep's expression on his face. Now, the only things that I did like from this chapter is seeing Justice again and Shiki showing up to find Witch. Everything about this chapter is underwhelming for me, and hopefully the next chapter will be better.
1 week later.
Oh dear God, what the hell did I just read? This chapter, oh God, this chapter is insane, especially at the last panel where my heart dropped. I thought I didn't like the last two chapters, but this one is brutal. Okay, let me just calm myself down and I'll start from the beginning. So the chapter starts where it left off with Weiss, Rebecca, Pino, Happy, and Moscow going up against this guy, and then later on he forces Weiss and Rebecca to choke themselves. But then this girl called Lyra decided to take Rebecca away for a show, I guess. But then the watch on Weiss's wrist activates his armor and discovers that he doesn't use hypnosis, but uses electrical signal that is forcibly reconsidered with the other people's ether gears, which Weiss described it as the reverse ether gear, and thus there is a fight between him and this guy. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's nothing brutal about this fight, which is not, but the horrific part of this chapter is during the time when Rebecca was under Lyra's control and told her to take her clothes off. But Lyra decided to undo the hypnosis, causing Rebecca to pass out, saying it was a little too effective. And that is when things take its turn for the worse. When you see Lyra looking at Rebecca's legs, saying how beautiful they are, it cuts to the next panel, seeing Rebecca waking up looking much older. And then Shiki walks in looking older as well. It is discovered that Rebecca has traveled into the body of her future self, and what makes things worse is that she can't use the cat lever. Not only the Rebecca from that timeline was in a coma, but realized that her legs are gone. That was the panel that made my heart sink. My girl Rebecca lost her only source of access to her ether gear and has no way of traveling back. Oh my God, I need a break. I need to chill. I won't bother reading any spoilers for the next chapter because this one just got me. It got me hard. And I was so lucky that I went on vacation during the week of that next chapter. So until then...
2 weeks later.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh man, my girl Rebecca needed that hug. I needed it too. Thank you, Shiki. Thank you, Mashima. Man, after the last chapter, it scared me to see this panel with Rebecca with robotic legs. And then during this chapter, Master Noah told Rebecca that she has been in a coma for years after losing her legs. But that isn't the only bad news that she received. It turns out that everyone on the Eden Zero have died, according to Shiki. But then before Rebecca lost her conscience again and wakes up back to her younger self, Shiki said that she's the only one who could change the future. So yeah, it might have been a short reunion for older Shiki to have his friend back, but back to the present, Rebecca woke up in a bunny outfit. Okay, are we really having some fan service cliche after that dramatically state in the last chapter? But then again, I should have expected much from the creators. But at least I get this. Girl thinking about her future husband, and I don't blame her. Anyways, back to the present, Rebecca becomes a guest on Lyra's show and challenges Rebecca to a game of cards. Meanwhile, Weiss is fighting against this guy with upgraded battlesuit, and by the looks of this battle, it looks like Weiss is going to lose. But then we get an unexpected surprise as we see Weiss unlock his overdrive. Now I know I said before that Weiss and or Rebecca was going to be the next one to gain this power after seeing Homura's overdrive. Now seeing Weiss in the state of power, it will only be a matter of time before we see Rebecca's Overdrive. Saving the best for last, I see, and the curiosity's hitting home run to see that image. Another volume that was well done in my opinion, although the last 2 chapters didn't sit well with me. And believe it or not, that was where the volume should have ended with chapter 149, Power Loss. But that just didn't cut it with me. So I added chapter 150 for my own personal reason, because after Power Loss and using the SpongeBob time card, I couldn't just cut it to the end now, could I? It would have thrown off the whole script of this volume, and would have had to rewrite the last chapter and didn't have time or patience to do so. So to make things easier, I added on chapter 150. But with all that said and done, please tell me your thoughts on this volume by leaving a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. Don't forget to check out my Twitter, TikTok, and Patreon. And last but not least, hit that notification button for more updates and new videos. RoseRed17 out.